You're listening to the Convene Connections podcast with your host, Matthew Currie.
And good evening, everybody. I'm so excited for this podcast. I have my boy LC here. We're going to kick it for about an hour. It's going to be really good. And I'm coming from you. You can see I'm not in the Convene studio. My house is being painted, LC, so I'm up in my son's room. Got his jersey on the wall. How are you doing tonight?
Man, I'm good. I'm grateful to be here, man. I'm just happy to be here with you guys, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. So look, you're one of the newest members to Convene. I'm sharing it on my personal page right now. So I was go live. So let me set that up there. You're one of the newest members to Convene Communities. I'm extremely excited that you're here. Some great things are happening within Convene, and your story that we're going to kind of get into and talk about, and really also how you got to Convene is extremely exciting to me. So just tell me a little bit about yourself, just to start everybody off so everybody knows who you are.
Well, I am LC. I have a small little platform called Hope and Recovery Network on Facebook and Instagram. I have a podcast called Recovery Soul Food, and I have a group on Convene called Recovery Soul Food as well. I am obviously I am in recovery. I'm 7 years in recovery after, surviving a 22-year addiction, man. And it was the escape from great, intense, pain through my life, not being who I was, trying to fit into a box, man, that just was not big enough for my soul. So through the process of recovery and coming into recovery 7 years ago, I made a decision that I had to change. Like I had to change and find the root causes of these things, or else it was going to be a little bit of clean time, back out, little bit of clean time and back out. And I didn't have another run in me, man. I just didn't have another run. And so, here I am, and 7 years clean, and do a little bit on Facebook and on YouTube and stuff. And just because I think, man, if I could do it, if I could really get a hold of this and to find the freedom of healing, man, that's the biggest part is I think the old paradigms of recovery where it's just abstain is like, trying to stand and hold back water with your hand, it just doesn't work. And I had to really get clear and get real with myself and say, what is the roots? What are the roots of this? Why can I only conquer this for a little while? And getting into healing all that stuff, man, wasn't easy, and it's not on a daily basis. But, I think there's a natural progression towards wanting to be abstinent from drugs and alcohol. And I think we're all in recovery from something, whether it's substance that we use to escape, whatever it is, we are all in recovery of mind and recovery of heart. Like I think we're moving into a new consciousness in the world where we're saying enough with the secrets already, man. Let's talk about our shit, let's talk about it.
Absolutely. And you said something that I find that a lot of people say, and I want to bring to, you said, I don't have another one in me, and a lot of times when you're talking to people in recovery, that's one of the comments that you hear so often. And when I hear somebody say, I don't have another one in me, that tells me that you've hit rock bottom.
And bounced up and hit again and bounced up and hit again. And my 9-month relapse, man, my last relapse saved my life. And it was really what saved my life. I had built enough too much to lose. I had, and I just got to the place where it was like, I'm too old for this. I can't keep doing this. I had a teenage son at the time. He was just coming into being a teenager. He had not seen me in that space of using because I had some clean time, but I was still a raging maniac, man. I was a rageaholic. I was suffering from a lot of PTSD and I didn't understand it. I was suffering from a lot of generational paradigms of this is just who you are. You're angry. You have an anger problem. This was the way you're raised. All those things that just come through the pipelines that we start building our lives on. And I was watching the very things that I had gone through. I was watching myself now repeat these things with my son. And I said, hold up, man, he deserves a better version of me. And I started, for the first time ever, I was able to think of the consequences. I had just enough of clarity to be able to think of how this bigger picture was going to look if I didn't get it together, man. And I just knew that this was the time. I mean, I've gone across the country, homelessness, lost thousands. I mean, we've all been on top, and we've all watched it just drain down. I mean, addiction is no respecter of person. It will take everything you've got.
That's right. And
then some.
Yeah.
And yank your soul from your toes, man. And then, ultimately it wants to take your life. And I couldn't understand why I was still here, but I decided, you know what, if I'm still here after 3 suicide attempts, 4 flatlined overdoses, probably 4 like near death flatlined accidents because I was loaded. If I've made it through this, man, there's got to be a reason, and I'm going to get curious to what that is, and I won't stop until I find it.
Yeah, you ran out of your 9 lives.
Yo, yeah. Hey, I was working on credit I didn't have, man.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. And well, I'm so glad that you turned the corner. What made you turn the corner? I mean, what was the moment, like the rock bottom where you're like when you went down that path and you're like, oh, I'm done.
Man, I had really just started seeing my son gained 100 pounds in 6 months. We no longer had our own house. We were living in the house with my mom and stepdad, who just loathed us. And, it was such an uncomfortable situation. We took him to the doctor, and they said he had something called Cushing's disease. And it was brought on by an overproduction of the stress hormones in the pituitary gland. And that woke me up. I was like, he's stressed out. Like, he doesn't see what's going on, but when you're a kid, when something's going on with your mom and dad, like you ain't got to see it. You just know. Yeah. And we were keeping some kind of crazy habits. And so it was that had me decide to finally get into treatment. And I picked the treatment with all the rules, man. I wanted the rules. I needed the structure. And then 3 days before I was supposed to start treatment, I got arrested. And it was in that moment, like that was the sign that, yeah, we're on the right path. And I had a choice in that moment, whether to do that same old thing, like, we throw our hands up at God and say, see, I'm trying to do the right thing. And look at this, I had that moment where I was like, no, man, like this is the time you take responsibility. There's nobody here to blame. And we're going to take this and use it. And I just decided in that moment that no more wasted pain. I was not going to waste another day of any type of pain. I was going to do this no matter what. I was going to do this for my son until I could do it for myself. And that's exactly what happened. And, and the process of healing was much harder, I started finding out, than the process of just staying clean. Yeah. And, I knew there was a difference there. Like I knew that this was going to be the different time. And I really started studying. I started studying me, and I started studying how to really open up. I think that was the turning point, is that moment where you just open up and say, okay, I'm naked here. Like I'm completely naked. Help me. And I went into that treatment center with only 2 things. I said, okay, anything I think to do, I'm going to do the exact opposite. And I'm going to tell the truth if it's brutal and hurts people's feelings. I don't know how to do it. It was all black or white. So I was like, these are the 2 things I'm going to walk in until I gain some skills. and I'm going to use these counselors in this program, and I'm just going to spill it, man. And I just started spilling it, man. And it's freeing when you get that stuff outside of you.
Yeah, you wanted it, right? And I think, unfortunately, you know, that's one of the problems out there is too often people don't want it. You know, that they just, like you said, it's easier just to keep on doing what you're doing.
Sure. Oh man,
with the flow. But when you hit that bottom and when you brought your son in on it, yeah, that must have made you feel pretty bad, you know? And I hate to say it, but, you know, hopefully y'all moved past that. Everything's good to go because you hit that point and now it's just a different thing.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And, you know, he's a 22, he's about to turn 21. He's an amazing young guy. You know, there's no end to how we can sit and beat ourselves up for the things that we see, you know, in our kids. And that was the difference in me this time, because I started realizing that guilt has no glory, number one. And if I stay in the victim mentality and just beat myself mercilessly for all this stuff, I'm not really helping him. And I decided that a true apology to him for all this was to eradicate the behavior that created the issue. And so I wanted to spend every single day now giving him, you know, because he's not my blood son, you know, he had a father that wasn't in the picture too much, but, you know, was there enough to have caused him some pain. And I was like, you know what, well, I'm going to be an example to him that, you know, this is what you do when you love somebody and when you love people, you get better. You know, you don't just apologize, you apologize with the action of getting better. And that was my focus on that, is I wanted to give him somebody to look at and say, okay, I can start to build on this foundation. And I did not even remotely get it right, because I didn't realize how screwed up I was, man, until I started trying to go through it and heal it. Oh man, I was a mess. I was a mess.
That's that. Yeah, a lot of people are, and I'm so glad that you said that, the ownership of it, because until you own it, again, you can brush off, but until you own it, you're not going to change. Right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and I walked around with a lot of, and I think this is happening in the world right now, because I think, you know, we come from a generation where we started losing two parents in the home when I was young. And so we started having a lot of working mothers. We had a lot of step families going on, and it just wasn't a real good scene. And I grew up with a lot of abuse that had happened. And I walked around angry about that for a long time, until I started realizing I was giving them all the power. And I had been victimized, but everything I did with that, from the time that I was on my own, away from that situation, all of that belonged to me. And I had to make a stand and say to myself, are you going to continue to let them do this? I mean, because I started learning about the brain and what was actually happening in the brain, so that every time that I was thinking of those things, it was happening in my brain all over again. It doesn't know the difference between 20 minutes ago and 20 years ago. It was tearing my body apart from the inside out. And I thought, I've gotten clean, and now I'm going to die of a heart attack because I'm a rageaholic and a maniac. You know, what in the hell, man? We got to get some stuff together. Like, this ain't okay.
That's also pretty shocking too, is how often childhood trauma or things that go on from your childhood lead to where you are as an adult.
Absolutely.
You know, either for good or bad, good or bad. So, you know, it's so interesting. So, well, we'll get back to that a little bit, but let's talk about this guy named Anthony McCauley.
My man. Mac.
And how did you meet Anthony?
Man, I met Anthony, who I now absolutely call, man, probably my best friend in the world. I met Anthony. I was speaking to some teenagers at a group home, and Pender County, North Carolina, which is about 20 minutes up the road from me. And I was sitting in a circle with these guys, and about halfway through the meeting, I had the director come in over my shoulder, and she was apologizing for interrupting. And she said, "I've got somebody here, and he really wants to come in, and he's just going to sit back here on the couch. He's not going to say anything, but he really wants to come in." And I'm like, "Of course, bring him in. The more, the merrier." And here comes Big Anthony walking through, man, and he's such a clean guy. He makes his presence. You can't miss his presence, And so he just walked in. He sat in the circle, and I was continuing to speak, and I'd see him over there. I mean, he just couldn't hardly sit still. And finally, he just apologized, and he was like, "That's my brother right there." And he was pointing to me. He was like, "We've been through something." And he got up, and we have been embraced and right in the middle of the circle, and we just connected on like I had known him my entire life in that moment. Yeah. And that thing ended a little bit, and he said, "Man, I got to get you up by, I live up kind of by Winston. I got to get you up to talk to my boys." And he handed me his card. And like I said, it was kind of like one of those dates you go on, it's a good friendship, but you're like, "Do I call? I don't know if I'm going to call, man. I don't know." I had been burned a little bit, so I was hesitant to call, man. And then a couple months later, boy, I'll never, ever forget this day. We had talked a little bit, I'd sent him a message through Facebook and just said, "Man, it was an amazing time meeting you. Like, I love what you're doing. I love Males of Distinction." What he was doing, it really made me think of my own son. And I thought, man, this has got to be done. Like, you don't even know how important this is.
It is.
It's so important, man. And so I wrote him that. So we wrote back and forth, but I was to the place in the pursuit of my dream where I was at that place where I was almost burnt out. And I was on that last knee where I was like, "God, if I'm on the right path here, please just, give me a sign." And I know it's going to sound cliche and people are going to say, "Call bullshit," but it's not, man. 10 minutes later, I get this call from Anthony, and of course I pick it up, and he starts telling me about Convene, and he was easing into it, and I was like, "I've never heard you be so timid, man. What's going on?" And he starts telling me about it, and as he's telling me about Convene, he's getting excited and he's getting pumped up, and I was just kind of sitting there speechless, and I think that started kind of getting him like, "Uh-oh, man, my worst fears come true. LC don't want to hear this." And I was just speechless because I thought, here's my sign, man. This is it. I was like, "You're damn right I'm on board for this, man. This is exactly what I had put in my prayer of wanting in a community, in a platform, in a one-stop shop." And I was convinced, like I was in from that moment. And I got on, I think you were doing something. He said, "Well, show up at 10 o'clock. And I was at work, man. I was in the middle of this over here on the island working.
We had a book review with Patty Moeller, and you popped right in the middle of it.
Right in, man. Like nobody knew who I was. Like, "Hey." I'm like, "Hey." I thought it was just going to be me, you, and Anthony. And I was like, "Hey, there's a whole room here." Oh, I'm just
going there was like 10 people on. It's like, "Oh,
man." Looking like a goober over here, but I'm in here. I'm in, man. I'm in.
Yeah.
That was really good, man. That was good.
That was good. And I remember talking to Anthony before he called you, and he's like, "Man, I got this guy LC, I think I should say something to him. I don't know if he'll be interested. I don't know if I can talk to him, Matt. I don't know if I know enough to tell him." I'm like, "Man, you got this. You got this." He goes, "But he's my boy, man. We got to bring him in. What he does is so important to people." And I'm like, "You got this." We love Anthony. I'm telling you what, I love him. He was up here the other day. Had a chance to spend some time with him. We called you up and all that. And we're building a great thing. We're building, Anthony's the community leader for Convene Hope and Support. And he's right there, and he's going to be a huge part of Convene. You're going to be a huge part of Convene. You have a group inside of Convene Hope and Support. So let's kind of dive in and talk about some of the stuff that you do, because you mentioned it earlier. We'll get to the group here in a minute, but let's talk about your podcast first. Some of the stuff that you do with your podcast, because you're making a huge impact out there and a big difference.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. I have the Recovery Soul Food podcast because I really found going through recovery really brought me on a deep spiritual, like, enlightenment, awakening, like that big thing that I never thought possible. I used to laugh at people when they talk about it. But I mean, it really, really has. And I think that the old paradigms of recovery, the anonymity, the war stories over and over and over, I think that really keeps us down. And so I really started moving towards a very conscious standpoint of, changing belief systems and really learning about what happens to us in that early childhood and why it affects us. And I started learning about the brain and neuroplasticity and just really researching what's actually going on. And so I like to have guests on my podcast that are moving in that direction of that conscious recovery of overcoming these stories that, number one, bring attention to things that are sometimes ugly and we don't like to talk about, like severe child abuse, like, post-traumatic stress, wartime post-traumatic stress. I got a guy coming on who, did a few tours in Iraq and just came out with some issues and he didn't even understand it. Yeah. So, suffering from that myself, PTSD, I mean, that's a sneaker. That's a disease. It's a sneaker, man. I mean, it sneaks up on.
Yeah.
And I think the old, just the old shame and the old blame ways that I'm trying to change the way the world recovers, man. I'm trying to change the way the world sees recovery. I'm trying to change just the way people see themselves, man, because when you don't believe in you, you're not going to make it. You gotta start believing in you. And I want to help people get there. And, that's what I do in my coaching. That's what I try to do 3 mornings a week there on Facebook and the YouTube channel, because we have the Recovery Soul Food YouTube channel as well. And it kind of started as a podcast. It kind of went out now as these live videos. And so I'm bringing it back home into the podcast, because podcasts changed my life. When I first got into recovery, I would work with my earbuds in and I would constantly, it was just podcast after podcast after podcast. That was my recovery program, because I didn't do the regular things that people in recovery do. And that was it for me, and just learn about those things. So that's what we try to do there on Recovery Soul Food. And, same with Hope and Recovery Network there on Facebook and Instagram. Just try to do that. Just try to give people daily. I always say information, inspiration, and motivation. Plain and simple. I think all those things put together bring you into a wholeness of being and a healing, a deep healing.
Well, it's funny. Eugene Brown just said, changing the world one person at a time.
Yeah.
With a belief in self. Love it. And that's true. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, PTSD is something that I focus on a lot. And I work with a lot of people, having been a vet that, served in combat, who lost friends, all of that stuff. A lot of people know my story and everything like that. But I found that, yesterday I did a summit. We talked about this a little bit before, the Wounded Warrior Umpire Academy. A lot of people have that misconception of, PTSD is just for people in the military. That was so long. That went on for so long. It's just people in the military. It's only people in the military. It's so false, right?
Yeah.
Tell me, we'll talk about that a little bit more, but I want to bring this up. Have you ever heard the term, or do you focus on the term moral injury? Do you know what that is?
No, in fact.
Yeah. So moral injury is this. A lot of times we, with people with PTSD, focus on the trauma of what happened, the trauma of abuse, the trauma of being in combat, the trauma of the actual event, right? And that messes with you. There's no doubt about that. PTSD is real. But for the longest time, we didn't focus on the moral injury that comes along with that. We didn't focus on the guilt that we might feel from that trauma. We didn't focus on the guilt, like in the military, that survivor's remorse. Why did I survive and this person die? Why was I not the one who took that bullet and they took it when they were standing right beside me? Or why did their helicopter crash and my helicopter survive? Yeah. And so that moral injury is something that we have to add to the conversation of PTSD. Both are relevant. Both are just as important. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same in active addiction, man. I mean, see, I think that my belief system is that, being a heroin addict and losing friends, it was like being in a war zone every single day, because every time you went out, you were going places where they were living in war. I mean, and not knowing if you were going to come back that day. I mean, and that was the strength of the addiction. And there was a time in my life where every male friend I made died. I mean, I can't count to the point where, I went inside of myself and just isolated,
Yeah.
Anthony is probably one of just a handful of friends that I have stepped out on a limb to have, just because I got so afraid of that. And it's real. You're right. I mean, that moral injury makes a lot of sense, because that guilt is real. We were here together. Why wasn't it me? And for me, what hurt me so much about it all was I was wanting to die, and I would see these talented, I was a musician. So a lot of my friends were really talented musicians, and I'm seeing these young guys just die, and they had so much to offer. And, and that's real, man. I'm glad you brought that up, man. That's real.
Yeah. So take a look at that. And it's something that we can keep talking about over, this time of what we're doing, because I think it's something that's, I don't want to say it's a newer concept, but it's really something that I think that we can focus on. PTSD is real. I was obviously military. I was a first responder. So, a lot of times in that first responder world, there's a lot of PTSD that people don't talk about, or they don't give the same credit to. But people that are first responders, man, they see the worst of the worst. They're the first people on accident, at accidents where there's, unfortunately, young people that have died or children that have died. It's brutal. It's brutal,
Without a doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, well, that's really cool. So, how long have you been doing your podcast?
I have revamped the podcast now. We've been up for about a year. I actually joined with a sponsor called shoprecoverystuff.com. And they are, they're just amazing people, Mark and Marty McLeod, and they came on with me to sponsor the podcast. And, I've been honored to have revamped it. I started this whole thing with nothing but a vision. I didn't have a computer. I didn't have a mic. I didn't have nothing, man. And I just had a vision. And, little by little, I started buying things. And about a year or so ago, my laptop bit the dust, and, I was out for a while. And so Shop Recovery Stuff came along and bought me a new computer and everything. And so since then, I have just been like so hyper focused on getting that done, because I think that's, for somebody like me, you take into that, because, the gratitude is not lost. Gratitude changed my life. That was the change that started making me different, was gratitude. And for someone to sow into you and your dream, that really, just like you guys and Anthony, I mean, for someone to sow into your dream, it really, I mean, it leaves me lack of words, and that's rough for me. I usually have something to say all the time, but it really is. It's just, it makes me very, very just grateful, and it's really humbling, to see other people believe in your dream. And so we've been having the podcast now for about a year, really revamped, like the last 6 months, been really going at it. But I've been doing Hope and Recovery Network and live videos for about 3 years now.
Awesome.
About 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what, that's all content for Convene. Every single video, we can transition that in.
Man, I love it.
Yeah, so you're a big part of Convene now. We're so excited to have you. This hope and support community that you're already in, right?
Yep.
What did you say your network was called?
My group in the Hope and Community Support is Hope and Support Community is Recovery Soul Food. I stayed right with that. So, but yeah, I'm grateful to be a part of Convene, man. I just can't wait to see where this goes. I mean, I think the sky's the limit.
It is the limit, and I believe it. And that what's so exciting to me is we're bringing together such good people. You know, Anthony. We talked about Anthony. We keep bringing him up. You can't help but you can't. But he's such a good guy, and you know, and he came on board and he brought Lindy. I don't know if you've met Lindy.
Yeah.
He got Lindy on board. I just love the both of them, and Lindy's, you know, doing great things and bringing you on board. And the reason why I bring that up is because it's become a family. It's become, and that's the term that gets thrown around a lot within our meetings and our get-togethers, is that, hey, we're building this family, you know, and that's so important. And it's really pretty cool because when people are in that recovery state like you, and you know, when you've been there, when you come in and you're all of a sudden you see everybody with the same goals, same mindset, same heart, trying to make such a difference to people, that means a lot, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah,
without a doubt.
Yeah. And so where you and I didn't get to go to the funeral either. I was in Indianapolis, but Eugene Brown, who's watching now, he was there, right?
Yeah.
And representing Convene, and that, you know, I think that's a great thing, you know, for Anthony to see.
Oh, it meant so much to him, man. It just meant so much to him to walk in and see Eugene, because yeah, man, that meant a lot to him, and it means a lot to me, man. He's like my brother, and just to know that Eugene was there, that choked me up now.
Yeah, that's right. So you took Anthony. Well, we'll move on in a minute, but I just love the guy. So you took Anthony to the beach recently.
Yeah, man, absolutely. We work on Ball Head Island, and we're having some work done at our house in Wilmington, and one of our customers and homeowners was, you know, like, yeah, you should stay there, and this place is completely wrapped around with windows, and it's right on the beach. And so, you know, Anthony and I made an agreement after that phone call from Convene that we would always be obedient when we felt the pull to contact one another, always. And that's come in handy for us so many times. But the moment we got here, you know, I felt that pull, like, you know, call Anthony and see if he wants to come down. You know, that would just be awesome. And surprisingly, he did, because we're about almost close to 4 hours away to come. And so he did. So I sent him the money for a ticket, because you can only get here by ferry. There's no way off this place by boat.
Yeah.
And man, he came, and we just had the most profound, amazing 5 days. I mean, it was meant to be a healing mission for him, but it turned out to be such a healing mission for me as well, because we just really got together and made some good plans, and just really grew our bond and friendship. So yeah, he got to be here, and it was pretty amazing seeing that big guy on this little island, and we call ourselves the twins, because standing next to each other, he's like 7'1,000 and I'm like 5 foot nobody standing beside him.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I brought that up because you know, with Anthony and you, and where we're at, right? Peer-to-peer counseling is so important, right? Yeah. And when you have somebody that has walked where you've walked, been through what you've been, it is so important that you learn to lean on them.
Absolutely.
You learn to trust. And it's also at the same time so important that when you start messing up, that you have somebody there that will hold you accountable.
That's right.
Talk a little bit about that.
Why that's right, man. I want to tell you, man, accountability is probably the reason that I'm sitting here today. I mean, when I went into treatment, I went into the program, like I said, that was going to hold me accountable. And, you know, to have Anthony in my life and to be that also in his life, somewhere that you can just be who you are, because you're right. It makes it makes a big difference when somebody's walked in those same, gutters that you've walked in, and you don't have to be embarrassed or worry about what they're going to think, because they've been there, man. They've walked in those shoes. So there is this amazing freedom that comes with being able to say, man, I'm struggling with this today. And they're like, yeah, I feel you. I got you. I went through that in year one, maybe here's how I got through it. Or just hold the space, man. Just be there to say, yeah, man, that's real. And you can feel. Don't think, feel. And having that accountability partner, I mean, we do it for each other, even in the pursuit of our dreams, like just in that dream life, like we hold each other accountable to working on those things. And so I can say that accountability is probably one of the biggest keys to recovery, and it doesn't feel good, man. It doesn't feel good. I mean, beforehand, you're not really accountable for much. It's a very selfish disease, but, having people that care about you and that love you, man, for just who you are. I don't want anything from you. I just want to be here, man, and love you and be your friend, and vice versa. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. And you're right when you said something about the trust. That's a big thing in our community. I think in all of us.
Yeah. Let me throw another word out to you. I want to get what you think about this. Is stigma of addiction. Talk about that, because I've had that conversation with multiple people, and when you're talking about just the stigma of addiction and where you've been, because I look at it differently, and I think it's again, we have to change the way we look at it, right? I can give two shits about what happened yesterday.
Yeah,
move forward and let's go for to tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So talk about stigma a bit,
man. I tell you, the biggest fight for anybody in recovery is the stigma, is just is letting folks ever let you live it down, because we got to realize that out of one side of our mouth we speak about, you should do this and this and this, and pull your life together and make it right and do the right things, and yet then all of a sudden you kind of go through something, or we'll just throw it out like this. Something comes up missing in the house, and it doesn't matter if you've been clean 7 minutes or 7 years. The look just seems to come to you. And that's a really big thing. That's a stigma that I don't think a lot of people understand they have until the moment comes up. And I choose to go at, changing the stigma of recovery, addiction. I try to go at it less in a angry sense, the way I used to go at it, and try to let it be a teaching moment, because I think we got to make it safe for people to learn as well. Like, you did that. Like, you really did just look at me, man. You really looked at me. But let's talk about that. Let's talk about, what are you still thinking about? Like, when does somebody ever get to live that down? I know for Anthony, it's hard for people that don't understand, because for somebody like me that's in recovery, and I'm really in recovery, I recognize another soul in recovery. I recognize when somebody has had their fill, when they're at enough and they are on the recovery path. It's very telling. And, I know that it's been hard for Anthony going through, this tragic situation. A lot of people are, hey, you're not, you're okay, aren't you? You're okay. And sometimes, and I say this to a lot of people in new recovery, is, we got to not get mad about that. Like, let's relax and let's let them, because we don't realize that they've gone through their own trauma with us as well. Absolutely. They don't really feel how done we are. Let's continue to walk through. But after a certain amount of time, you don't have to just keep taking that. Take that moment and say, hey, look, this is enough for me. So I think that's another thing that's really great about having another peer, that you can see that recovery spark and that recovery light, because I don't worry about Anthony and that that aspect at all. And I don't think he worries about me in that aspect. Like, we've definitely outgrown that part, but
Yeah.
there will be people forever that will always, always worry about that. And,
And they will. And people will worry about, oh, what do I look like? I'm so embarrassed about my past,
sure,
people are looking down on me, or people are thinking bad about me because
sure.
I had a past, And
Yeah.
so that's not important, But at the same time, I really respect for you saying what you said, is that a lot of times you're not the only one who's gone through that trauma.
Right.
Right? You're not the only person. And I know it's extremely difficult for the other family members or the other people who have gone through that. And in fact, we talked about that a lot yesterday on the summit, about, two of the guys that I interviewed yesterday. It was their spouses that were like, hey, enough's enough. One guy talked about it took his wife videoing him one night. And then when he sobered up the next day, to say, hey, check it out. Look at this. This one, And, but they've gone through the trauma as well.
Absolutely. And their trauma is different. And I was actually blessed to actually get to be on the other side. Now, in the midst of it, I didn't think I was so blessed, but I know now, because my wife and I went into recovery together, but she ended up having a relapse there in our first year, and it lasted for 2 years. And, I couldn't understand at the time. Again, you're tempted to go, what do you mean? But the fact of it is I trusted there was a plan for this. And what there was is I really got to understand what it was like to be on the other side. You're doing all the same things. You're just not getting the reward in the end. You're not getting the high in the end. You're robbing and stealing too, because now you're going through guilt of enabling, or am I not enabling? What are they going to do if I don't do this? And having to, I remember the hardest part was having to make the decision to go to sleep at night, knowing that I may or may not have my wife when I get up. That was a hard decisions that people don't really understand that the family goes through.
Yeah.
And I'm utterly grateful to have gone through that experience. My wife today is, working on 5 years clean by the grace of God and her hard work and healing. But that was tough. And so I have a whole new respect for, families, and am able to, I've made some real apologies in my own life to my family, where I've gone back and said, man, I didn't even realize how much you guys went through, because it's a selfish disease,
Yeah. So Patty Moeller, great lady, big part of Anthony McCauley's life,
I know
his recovery. But one of the things that Patty has told me is, I have a brother struggling right now who's getting ready to go to rehab on Monday. And
awesome.
but we've talked a lot, and she's like, this may sound harsh. This may sound like one of the harshest things that you could ever hear. But she's like, I will tell my clients, say, hey, do you love Matt to death? Saying that to my parents. Do you love Matt to death? Yeah. And they'll say, we love him more than anything in the world. And she'll say, well, go buy a life insurance policy on him. And they look at you like, well, what? And she's like, yeah, go buy a life insurance policy on him, because you're loving him to death. You're enabling him is killing him. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things that people really struggle with, is the enabling, just like you just said. And I think that's what are your thoughts on that?
Oh man, my grandparents, as hard as it is to say, my grandfather was my best friend, but they had to die in order for me to live. They enabled my addiction for so long that there was no way that I could get clean. And I lost both of them. My grandmother died in December of 2007, late. And then my grandfather died 6 months to the day after. My whole world was shattered. What a lot of people don't understand is that's when the blessing starts, because it was from that shattering that I then had to get up and figure out what I was going to do. And they did not do it on, and they are one of the biggest inspirations for wanting to spread so much out about this, and for the family, is because they didn't realize they were doing anything wrong. They thought they were doing what they should do. Yeah. And the problem is we have to have more Patty Mollers stand up, and a lot of us stand up and say, you know, yeah, you're enabling is not love. You know, we've got to redefine what love in an addictive situation is, because you got to cross that line. It was hard for me with my wife because I had been on that side, and I had those fears of, you know, what's going to happen. I don't want her to go to jail. I don't want her to do this. And then I had to say to myself, but why would I be the one to take away her rock bottom? It's not my right to hand this money to her and take away what healing is trying to happen in her life.
Yeah.
And if you know, if she doesn't come back from it, I've got to then find a way not to feel guilty for the rest of my life because I stood up, because there's a big push pull in that thing, you know, because if, you know, I've been with parents, I've coached some parents through that have lost their children. Yeah. And they have that guilt, that same moral injury that says, well, if I would have just, and you have to say, no, like this was, this is their plate. I mean, this is, you know.
A lot of times parents and people or spouses or loved ones think, well, it's, you know, we got to force them. We got to force them. It's not my recovery to force somebody in. And when you try to force somebody in, often it fails, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I don't do the whole intervention thing. I think that might work 1 in a million times, but I mean, you can force somebody to go, but until they really are ready and get it, that's when. That's when. But yeah, I don't do the intervention thing. I don't subscribe to it just because, you know, I've been forced to go, and I know that when you put somebody in a situation like that with a bunch of other addicts that don't want to be there either, they end up learning more there. And I remember when I came out, the plane landed, and within 30 minutes of the plane landing back at home, I was off and running again, and I had so much new knowledge. So we really have to, you know, help people just start to see, number one, where their trauma plays into it. Number two, we need to let them know what's happening in their brain in the recovery process, so that they don't sit in thinking they just can't do it. We got to start helping them believe that they're worth it, because that's the big issue. I'm not worth it. Yeah. And you know, and some of them we'll save, and the sad part is some of them we won't.
Yeah.
But I think there's a purpose in that as well. I know a lot of moms and dads who now come out and speak. I mean, in fact, my podcast sponsors, Mark and Marty McLeod, they sew into other families of addicts. They coach families of addicts. They're both certified coaches. They have a son still in active addiction, but they sew into, you know, other families because they're going through it, man.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I want to give you a term, right? I want to ask you a term and get your thoughts on this, right? So when I say to you this term right here, what does it make you think of? Real life, real people, real experiences.
Well, that's just life. That's my life in a nutshell, man. That's what I want. That's yeah, man. That's it. That's it. Because come on, we're living real life. People are hungry to hear real life situations. We've all had enough powder puff TV. We've all had enough of that stuff. It's like, give me something real. Let me have some substance. I'm tired of eating TV dinners and snacks. Give me substance. And that's what I'm talking about, man. That's the only thing I know to give.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, because that's the tagline of Convene.
Yeah.
That's what Convene is all about. It's about real life, real people, and real experiences. And how we learn in life is through, hey, we fail. We fall. We don't always just fall. we succeed. So you can learn from your failures, but you can also learn from your successes. So it's really like me sitting here with you and going, hey, LC, let me ask you a question. If you were in this situation, how would you handle it? Now, when I ask you that question, what's your answer going to be? Your answer is going to be from your life experiences.
That's right.
Your answer is going to be what you've gone through. Maybe it's your failures, maybe it's your successes, but you're going to pull those experiences to help others. And that's what you're doing, LC. That's what you're doing all the time. You're pulling from that road and that path that you went down to make a huge, huge difference in lives. And I'm just so impressed with it. I think it's so cool.
Man, I love what you're doing, man. I love what you're doing. I love Convene. I love that it's that is the tagline. And not only is that the tagline, like that is what weaves through Convene. Like, I mean, I even look at it in the logo. Like, I see the weave, you know, real people, real life, real experiences. And I think that, man, that's why I was on, you know, within the first 3 minutes of Anthony talking. I'm like, heck yeah. Like, this was made for me, man. Like, this is it. And I'm glad to be here, you know? And so, yeah, man, I look forward to this. The world's hungry. It's hungry for what we're trying to do here, man. And I appreciate you sharing about your life and things as well. I don't think there's enough soldiers talking about, you know, what they've been through and what lasting, you know, what it leaves behind and the families. So bravo, man. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I think people they have to understand that you have to get real. You have to get vulnerable at times, right? And you have to know that it's okay. It's okay to just pour into people, to be vulnerable, to tell your highs and your lows. I mean, look, losing my friend Clark Beatty on July 9th, 2001 was the hardest thing I have ever gone through. But I told this story yesterday, you know, the PTSD that came from it. And I denied that for so long, you know. I went to Israel last year. When I went to Israel, I got to plant a tree in his name. Wow. It was incredible, right? Because there's a tree growing in his name in Israel, you know. And I sat there and I planted that tree and I prayed about it. And I prayed for him. But I've talked so much about that. And I was talking about this yesterday when we were doing the Wounded Warrior Umpire Academy Summit. I've talked so much about that. And I've had such good people surrounding me. This year on July 9th, 2001, I was umpiring a baseball tournament in Charleston, South Carolina with the Wounded Warrior Umpire Academy. So I was surrounded by my peers. It was the first July 9th that I just didn't break down and cry.
Wow.
Wow. And we actually did a podcast with Stezo that night, live from the baseball field. But it was the first night I didn't cry. This is the first night I didn't break down since July 9th of 2001. And it's because I'm sharing, because I'm talking about it. I'm getting it off my chest.
That's right.
Making me better. You know.
That's right, man. That's right, man. That's powerful. That's powerful. That's healing, man. That's healing. And that's what our world is hungry for. Hungry for it.
And what's the name of your podcast again?
Recovery Soul Food.
That's healing, man. That's it. I love it. I absolutely love it. That's really cool. So let's talk about this because we're running down on time right now. But where can people find you? Where can people follow you? If they have somebody that's in recovery or they're needing, some help, how can they reach out to you?
They can absolutely reach out to me. I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Hope in Recovery Network. I have on YouTube, we're at Recovery Soul Food. There'll be 2 that pops up. Subscribe to both. They're both ours. And I'm always live Monday, Wednesdays, and Friday mornings at 8 a.m. right now. Usually I'm there at 7:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time at Lona Currie at facebook.com, and that's LONACURRIE. But you know what?
We're one letter off. We're one letter off, Curran and Currie.
I know. I've always noticed that. I'm like, that's my brother somewhere.
Yeah, that's
right. He's kin to me somewhere.
Yeah, right.
He just misspelled his.
That's it. So keep going. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
And you can find the Recovery Soul Food podcast on iTunes and Spotify, anchor.fm. And yeah, man, we're kind of all out there like a big firecracker at the end. We're just everywhere.
Where's
Just
the
everywhere.
most important place?
Convene communities, baby. Hope and support community.
That's it. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, look, I'm really excited to have you as a part of Convene. I honestly look forward to growing this with you. You know, for everybody that's out there, you know, we're in the process of planning our big event next year. Now that the COVID stuff is kind of going away, and hopefully, you know, we'll get on the other side. But in Charlotte, North Carolina, we're going to have an event next year, live speakers talking about real life, real people, real experiences. It's going to be a platform with a purpose, with speakers like yourself coming on that stage and talking about who you are, the difference that you're making. Anthony McCauley is going to be on that stage, and I can't wait to hear him. Everybody, I'll go ahead and give you the hint. You got to have a song. You got to have a walk-up song. Oh. So I know Anthony's. I got mine. Stezo's going to be there. He's going to be producing the music and all that stuff. So it's going to be awesome. But it's going to be a big event. We're hoping for 2,000 plus people coming in here, and it's going to be different. We're bringing together people that have a story, and they're willing to tell that story for the good of others. And I'm really honestly excited about that. Your invite's there. I hope you'll come join us.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been talking about it already. Anthony's already been pumping me up about it. He can't wait. He can't wait, and I can't either, man.
Anthony says he's been practicing his walk up on the back porch of his house.
I believe it.
Isn't that true?
We'll have to practice it together. He's gonna make me watch it too and make me critique it. I bet you. That's
right. That's right. Well, look, I appreciate you coming on. Hopefully one day, you know, I'll be lucky enough to come on yours. You know?
Oh, you're coming, man. You're coming on mine already. You're coming on there, man. We need to get it together, man. I appreciate you having me here. I love Convene, man. I'm all about Convene. Love pushing it out. Got me a couple little folks from my couple little warriors are already over on Convene with me. I can't wait, man. I can't wait to see what happens with this. The world needs Convene, man.
Absolutely. So make sure after this, message me your address. We'll get you a T-shirt, a Convene Communities T-shirt.
Awesome.
I need your address too, so we'll get you one in the mail. But yeah, everybody can go to convenecommunities.com. You should be wearing the Convene swag. There's no reason not to follow Convene on. Yeah, we got to get some hats too. Big time. We're getting ready to order some. We talk about it all the time. So yeah, come on, convenecommunities.com. Come join our platform, Convene. We're making a difference. If you're somebody out there that has a group, if you're somebody that out there like LC that has a passion to help others, or something where you need to connect, communicate, and collaborate and educate, that's what we built here, and it's growing, it's exploding. So
sure
it's really fun. I see a lot of people have watched, a lot of good comments. So it's going to be good.
It's
going to be good. So
I'm coming for my fellow content creators in the recovery community. So y'all just get ready, because we're all going to Convene.
Convene, hope, and support. I'll say this, and then I'll give you the last words. There is no reason why Convene, hope, and support is not the biggest community that we have, because there's so many people in need of help. There's so many families in need of help. There's so many good nonprofits out there doing wonderful things. And there's so many people who, like yourself, have been to the low and crossed over and are at the high. And you have a great story to share, and you can make just a huge difference in people's lives. So we just need to grow this community. So I'm going to give you the last words, and Stezo will take us out of here.
Well, thanks again, man, for having me. I'm so honored to be a part of Convene. You guys head over to convenecommunities.com. Get over to the Hope and Support community. Find Recovery Soul Food. Find me, LC. And hey, all you content creators that I know and love, right there on Facebook, Recovery in the Community, you're coming with me. You're coming with me.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Stezo, again, as always, in the background. It's wonderful. I look forward. Next Thursday night, Shayna and Braden. Okay, next Thursday night, Shayna and Braden. If you're young, you better get your young people on here, because the 20-somethings are getting ready to take over the world, right? So They're running it next Thursday night, Shayna and Braden. So look forward. Thanks, Tizo. Thanks, LC. Thank you for being a part of this. I appreciate you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thanks, Tizo. You're a rock star, man. Thanks again.